Hey, everybody out there. I'm Judy the YouTube Lawyer. This week, I have been watching a lot of the Katherine Magbanua trial, which has been going on in Tallahassee, Florida for the last 10 days. So, just to give some background information about this riveting criminal trial, this all involves the death of a beloved law professor at Florida State University Law School. His name is Dan Markell. And Mr. Markell was a criminal law professor who was a brilliant academic scholar. He had gone to Harvard for both undergrad as well as law school. And unfortunately, after teaching in Florida for a number of years, he started having marital problems with his wife, Wendy Adelson. And the two of them had two very young sons at the time when she suddenly decided to take the boys and leave him while he was away on a trip to some sort of legal conference up in New York. So he came home and saw that his family was gone and there were divorce papers on the bed left behind for him by Wendy. So the two of them had a very acrimonious, very knockdown, drag out divorce battle where ultimately Wendy wanted to take the boys and move them away, probably around 8 or 9 hours away down to Miami, Florida, which is where she's from, and also where her parents and one of her brothers live. So she even tried to make a motion with the judge, trying to get permission to take the kids and move away. Of course, Dan Markell was very much opposed to this because he loved his sons and he wanted to have an equal role in their upbringing. So, one of the issues that they had within their marriage for quite a while was the fact that Dan Markell was a very religious person. He was very devoted to the Jewish faith and Jewish practices, whereas Wendy's family was basically non observant. In fact, even at their wedding, there was some sort of conflict that happened because apparently Dan wanted the meals to be kosher at the wedding, but Wendy's mother went behind his back and didn't seem to really care about that part of the catering of the wedding. And so Dan didn't find out until the wedding banquet that his guests had been served non kosher food. So he had to go around from guest to guest, personally apologizing for that. And he was very dismayed and upset. So that kind of set the tone for the relationship between Dan Markell and his mother-in-law, Donald Adelson, who is also believed to be one of the masterminds behind this murder for hire plot. So the two of them had a very terrible custody battle going on, and the judge had recently ruled that Wendy was not going to be allowed to take the two boys and move them back to Miami. So Wendy was very upset about this because for many years she totally hated living in Tallahassee, Florida. So it was a source of misery for her. She couldn't stand the town, she couldn't stand the people. And the only reason she had a job up there was because of Dan's tenure track professor position. So they had specifically made a position for her to be a clinical law professor at Florida State in order to get Dan to take the teaching position there. So as long as Dan was still up in Tallahassee and having his job there was no way Wendy was going to be able to move because they had joint custody of the children. And the kids were, I would say, only about 3 and 5 years old when he was murdered by the hitman. So the Adelson family seems like they're pretty much used to getting what they want. And the family is very well off because the father of the family, Harvey Adelson, who is believed to be about 71 years old now, he was the owner of a very successful dental practice in Miami. And their oldest son, Robert, is an ear, nose, and throat surgeon somewhere up in upstate New York. And he's believed to be estranged from the family, partly because the mother was so controlling that she insisted that he marry a Jewish woman. And they strongly opposed Robert being involved with an Asian Indian American woman who he met in medical school. So, due to the familial pressure, the oldest son, Robert, ended up finally breaking off his relationship with the Indian American doctor, and he married a Jewish woman. But strangely enough, that marriage only lasted for about a month before they got divorced. And then Robert got back together again with the love of his life, the lady who is still his wife. I think her name is Dr. Chalapali, and they have 2 children. But supposedly the parents did go to their wedding, but I don't think they have much of a relationship anymore, especially since all of this controversy about the family possibly being involved in the murder of Dan Markell has been going on since 2014, when Dan was shot by 2 hitmen in the garage of his own home. So this trial is about Katherine Magbanua, though. So I've been watching a lot of these live streams of the trial for the last couple of weeks, and usually people would just burst onto the chat and say, "Well, what's going on here? Why is this lady on trial? Did she kill him?" It is very confusing because there's a whole cast of characters involved in this alleged conspiracy to murder Dan Markell. So the theory is that the Adelsons wanted to get rid of Dan Markell. They hated him. Donna Adelson, the mother, hated his guts and called him gibbers. And Wendy, his ex-wife, also called him gibbers and all sorts of other curse words, and just felt like he was the reason for all her misery. So Wendy also had another brother who is slightly older than she is, Charlie Adelson, who was a very successful endodontist. So he worked around the Miami area, going from practice to practice, doing his work. And he also had this reputation of being like the playboy, a different woman every week or every month, just running around, sleeping around, doing drugs, hanging out with a rough crowd, hanging out at the gym, just basically being a very gregarious type of person that liked to commandeer conversations and be the one in charge. So Charlie also hated Dan Markell and totally sided with his sister. So the theory is that Charlie, the mother, possibly the father, and possibly Wendy all cooked up this scheme to try to find a hitman, somebody that would kill off Dan Markell so he could be totally out of the picture. Then Wendy could take those 2 boys and move them back down to Miami so the whole Adelson family could be happy together with those children, with Dan totally out of the scene. So this is where Katherine Magbanua came in. She was working as a receptionist or office assistant for a dental practice where Charlie Adelson happened to be doing some work here and there. As I said earlier, he didn't have a steady job working for his own practice, so he would go to different dental practices as needed to do the work. So that's how he met Katie and started showing interest in her. Now, Katie is an immigrant originally from the Philippines. So she and her parents and her 2 older brothers came over from the Philippines when she was about 10 or 11 years old to the Florida area, where her mother was a nurse. And I'm not really sure what her father did for a living, but I get the impression that the family was, working class and probably had some slight financial difficulties. But of course, like all immigrants, I'm sure her parents wanted her to make something of herself and do well in school and everything. But unfortunately, they probably didn't live in the greatest of neighborhoods or something, because somehow she met this guy named Sigfredo Garcia soon after graduating from high school. And he lived in maybe the same neighborhood or not too far away from where her family lived. And she was introduced to him through some mutual friends that she might have known through high school. And Sigfredo turned out to be like a drug user, drug dealer, life of petty crimes, not well educated, came from a rough family, bad family background, and he did some odd construction jobs. So Katie ended up getting pregnant with their first child with him when she was probably only say like 18 or 19 years old. And then later she had another child, a daughter with Sigfredo Garcia. And the two of them never actually got legally married, but they considered themselves husband and wife for some time. So just looking over here at the comments here, hey guys, thanks for being here and being so supportive of this channel. Yes, the jury is still deliberating, although I'm not sure when they would probably go home for the day though, because it's already 8 o'clock now. I've been tuning in and out of these live streams. So yeah, it looks like based on the Tallahassee Democrat live stream that the jury is still deliberating. And yeah, I have no idea what the policies are there, where the judge might just tell people to call it a day and then come back on Tuesday. I mean, on the other hand, everybody's saying that, they bet the jurors want to be through with this before the long weekend so they can enjoy their weekend. So maybe they will come up with a verdict sometime soon. So that's why I'm keeping that Tallahassee Democrat live stream on in another browser here. Yeah. Hi, Teasel. Thank you for being here. Yeah, let me know if you have any opinions on the case too, if you've been watching that. So Teasel is an attorney in California who also went to law school here in North Carolina, where I am. Oh, let me show you your comment. Yeah, the fact that the jury is still deliberating is bad for the state. Yeah, I mean, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I thought that maybe the jury would come back with a guilty verdict within an hour or two, but they did want to come back. They asked for a list of the exhibits, and then they also came back again and said they wanted to listen to that Dolce Vita recording of Charlie Adelson and Katherine Magbanua talking together in a restaurant. So yeah, I guess they really want to parse through all the evidence, or maybe there are some people or somebody holding out on a guilty verdict that they're trying to persuade. I'm not really sure. Yeah. Hi, Maple Cook. Thank you for being so supportive of this channel. Yeah. Thanks, Jeanette, for being here also. Yeah. Yeah. It is very interesting because, um, normally when people immigrate to the United States, they hope that their kids are going to get a great education and then make something good out of themselves and have a better life than the parents did. Um, so, I mean, all I have to say about Catherine and her family, I mean, not knowing these people personally, I'm just going to assume that her parents were probably very disappointed that she hooked up with Sigfredo Garcia, the drug dealer, drug user, didn't have a real job, didn't have a steady job, criminal record, just drinking and screwing around and stuff. So her relationship with her baby daddy, Sigfredo, was kind of volatile, on again, off again. It seemed like she would often scream and yell at him and kick him out of the apartment or kick him out of the house and stuff. So who knows how their kids have turned out. And I'm still not really sure who's taking care of those two children. The daughter might be around 10 or 11 years old, and the son might be around 16, 17-ish. And she did mention somewhere that her son had a disability or needed therapy. So maybe he had a learning disability or was on the spectrum. Not really sure about that, but it does seem like it was a very volatile type of relationship that she had with Sigfredo. Yeah, it is a really crazy case. Yeah. So, I don't know if you guys saw my previous live stream from a couple of months ago, but that was with the lawyer and true crime author Stephen Epstein, who is writing a book about the crime. So, as far as I know, Steve has been down there in Tallahassee this week to watch the trial in person and get more material for the book that he's writing. And hopefully he'll be another live stream guest again as we get closer to the time that his book is going to be published, which is expected to be in August. Yeah. I say not guilty for the murder charge, but guilty on the other two charges. Yeah. Well, I mean, she doesn't have to directly have murdered Dan Markell in order to be convicted of murder, but we'll see. I mean, I think I'd be happy if she's found guilty on anything. Yeah. Why are they taking so long? Yeah, exactly. It just goes to show that not everybody sees the case the same way, right? Yeah. Thanks for being here, Tony, also. Yeah. Hi, Serena. Hey. In a trial, who determines the result? Yeah, it's up to the jury. Yeah. Yeah, so since this is a jury trial, then it's up to the jury to determine the result. Although I think, okay, so I don't practice criminal law, but I think there is in a very, very small percentage of cases where the judge could nullify what the jury decides on if it looks like the jury has just totally abandoned their duties, but I think that is extremely rare. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, she wanted that relationship too. Okay. Um, yeah, that's right. Immigrants want a better life, especially Filipino immigrants. Yeah, you always hear about like how tough it is for, say, people from poorer countries that desperately want to come to the United States, and then usually the poor immigrant parents are taking on jobs that are beneath what their status might have been at their home country. For example, I know of Filipino immigrants who are actually doctors in their country or lawyers in the Philippines, but then they came here and they couldn't get that same type of license. So they ended up taking jobs that were more unskilled, just because they wanted their kids to have a better life and have the American education, and then hopefully, do much better and have a better quality of life, and, bring honor to the family, and make the family wealthier, and, everybody lives happily ever after. So the sad thing, one of many sad things in this, besides the death of Dan Markell, who was a guy that just wanted to be a good father to his two children, um, another sad thing is that Katherine Magbanua's mother, who was a nurse, died a few years ago while Katherine, also known as Katie, was in prison. So Katie got arrested, accused of being part of the murder conspiracy back in 2016. So she had just taken her daughter to a ballet recital when suddenly a bunch of police officers surrounded her vehicle and pointed guns at her, and she was so freaked out that she peed in her pants, and that's how she ended up getting arrested. And since then she's been in prison. She was already on trial a couple of years ago, and that resulted in a hung jury because a couple of jurors were holdouts and didn't vote for guilty. So that's why she is on trial again, because the first trial resulted in a hung jury. So ever since then, she's been in jail, and her mother ended up getting cancer and dying. So that was kind of the way that her testimony closed. I think it was kind of manipulative, but her attorney started asking her about, and didn't your mother pass away, or isn't she deceased now? And then Catherine just started, and then her testimony was pretty much over by then. So I think that was deliberate, to try to make the jury feel sorry for her. But ultimately, it's like, well, you can cry now, but this case is not about the fact that your mother died of cancer while you're in prison, but it is because you were part of the conspiracy to cook up this scheme to kill Dan Markell, so that you and your baby daddy and his friend could make a ton of money from this rich dentist family. So that's what my theory of the case is. Also, um, yeah, you thought they would be in there 3 hours max. Totally, yeah, same here. Yeah, um, yeah. I mean, she is, in my opinion, she is the bad guy. Also, I mean, yeah, we have a whole cast of characters that are bad, evil people who thought that the way to solving a problem in a custody case is to kill off the other person. And I'm an attorney who has done a lot of custody and divorce cases, so luckily none of my clients have ever been involved in attempting to murder the other person, but definitely it has happened, especially in any sort of hotly contested case where one person really wants to take the kids and move away. Yeah. Cat lady forever, no marriage. Okay, sure. Let's see. She's guilty of being shady. Yeah, I don't think she's okay. Well, yeah. Well, we'll see. Yeah. Let's see. Why pee in your pants if you're innocent? Okay. Yeah, they're still in there. Yeah, you would think they would just wanna leave and come back. Well, then again, if I were on the jury and we're coming close to reaching a resolution, I probably would say, "Let's just stay here all night long, and then we can be done and then go home and enjoy our long weekend." Yeah. How fair do you think it is for the jury to? Yeah, well, that's just the way the system is here in the United States, is that we have a jury system, and it's up to, I mean, in some cases, the defendants do have the ability to decide to waive the right to a jury and say that they want a bench trial, which means that the judge is the one that determines the entire result. So that's what happened in the Robert Wan um, murder case, where the three guys that are suspected of being involved in his murder, or at least covering it up, they were able to get off because they, in my opinion, wisely chose to have the judge be the one that decides on their fate, as opposed to taking a risk with a jury. So, yeah, it is pretty tough to be on a jury. I've actually never served on a jury before, because every time that I'm chosen to go be part of jury duty, it happens to coincide with when I actually have a court case myself. So I just constantly get out of jury duty because of these scheduling conflicts. Yeah, but it does seem like it can be a very stressful, tough sacrifice, and that's what makes it hard to have a good jury that really reflects the demographics of the community, or that you want to have a good jury with people who will really listen to the evidence and have an open mind, go in there with an open mind and actually be able to retain the information. Because as I mentioned in one of the chats, it is kind of sad, because most of the time people view jury duty as being a horrible thing, and nobody wants to be picked for jury duty, and they get mad if they have to go report to the courthouse because they got chosen. And most of the time, people do get out of it, because if you have some sort of like, you know, important job, or you have like a higher up type of role where you have to work full time, and it would be like a total burden for you to have to be gone for a week or two, or even longer, depending on what kind of case you get chosen to be a juror on, then most of the time the attorneys and the judge will excuse you from jury duty. So then you wind up with a jury that could just not really be reflective of the greater actual community. You could wind up with just mainly a bunch of, say, like 65 and older retired people or unemployed people. So anyway, I mean, yeah, you just never know, like, what the jury is going to be composed of. And I happened to be on this live stream, I think it was a couple of days ago. I don't know if you guys saw that, but apparently the cameraman screwed up and accidentally like turned the camera over to the side where you could actually see some of the jurors, even though that wasn't supposed to happen. So I didn't actually see that moment, because I think it only happened for about a second before the cameraman realized his mistake. But some of the people in the chat were saying that, oh, it looks like, the jury is made up of a lot of older ladies that look to be at least in their 50s or 60s. And there's another person who said that they only saw one of the jurors. So I'm not sure. I mean, go figure. Maybe after the case is over, then some of these people on the jury will talk to the media, which they are allowed to do. And then we can hear more about, what were the jurors concerned about? What were they questioning? Was there any sort of big conflict amongst the jurors about, whether one person was telling the truth or not? Yeah, so a lot of times you find that out after the fact, if people are willing to talk to the media. Yeah, Netflix special. Yeah, they're probably waiting to see what else happens in this whole saga, because Charlie Adelson, Wendy Adelson's brother, the guy that was dating Katherine Magbanua, he's the one that just got arrested about a month ago. So finally he's in prison, and there's no trial date set for him yet. But I mean, I personally believe that Charlie was one of the masterminds of this. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, who knows? I mean, I'm sure her mother was not feeling so great knowing that her only daughter, I think she was probably the only girl in the family, was like locked away in prison. Yeah. Do you think Donna will go down with Charlie? Um, Possibly. I mean, I think from what I've seen that there's a lot more evidence against Charlie as opposed to Donna, but Donna definitely had the motive to want Dan Markell killed. She had written some really scathing messages to her daughter, telling her daughter about what a horrible person Dan Markell was and how he was always talking down to her, meaning Wendy, and how mean he was to Wendy, and that um, you know, Donna would also trash talk Dan to her grandsons. So that was another issue that was taking place right before Dan was murdered. Dan had filed a motion with the court saying that he wanted Donna to only have supervised visits with the kids. He did not want his children to be left alone with the grandmother because Donna, the grandmother, was so negative towards him and was already constantly telling the kids bad things about their father. So I'm sure that enraged Donna when she saw that motion. So um, where do people? I have no idea because I've never tried to hire a hitman. Yeah, but I think when Charlie met Katie at the dental practice, I'm sure enough, Katie did tell Charlie that, oh, she has these two children with her baby daddy, Sigfredo, who is a, shady guy with a criminal record and sells drugs and everything. So maybe the gears started turning in Charlie's brain, thinking like, voila, now I have some sort of connection to some people that might be interested in killing off Dan Markell for the right amount of money. So it's alleged that Charlie, or at least the Adelson family, gave $100,000 to Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera, both of whom are in prison already now. And then there was testimony saying that Katie was there when the money drop happened. So right after Dan Markell was murdered, within a day or two, or soon after that, then there was a big brick of cash that was all like piled up in one hefty package that that was brought while Katie was there, as well as Luis and Sigfredo. And I think this was this Jessica who testified to it? Yeah, because I did see a lot of Jessica's testimony, and Jessica is the baby mama of Luis Rivera. So, of course, the defense was saying that Jessica didn't mention this the first time that she spoke with investigators. She didn't mention that Katie was also there when this like money arrived. Um, but then again, this was also before Luis Rivera was arrested too for the murder of Dan Markell. So perhaps Jessica didn't talk to the investigators, or wasn't as candid with the investigators first because she was trying to protect her baby daddy. So anyway, again, just going off on memory. So if you guys have a different recollection of what the testimony was, feel free to throw it in the chat box or leave it as a comment. So do you think some jurors are not smart enough to understand all the evidence? Yeah, you just never know. I mean, do you guys remember that Casey Anthony case where the young pretty woman who wanted to party all the time, she was accused of murdering her 3-year-old little girl, um, probably strangling her or something, and then burying her in a shallow grave, and then she had all these excuses, didn't even report her daughter missing for the longest time, and made up some fake nanny claiming that she had left her daughter with a nanny or whatever. Well, ultimately, Casey Anthony got off. It was a not guilty verdict from the jury. And I mean, I was like shocked. I didn't watch every single moment of the trial, but I read a lot about the case just through the news and stuff. But I mean, that's just really disgusting. So you just never know. There are plenty of travesties of justice out there where people just are able to put enough doubt into the minds of the jury to the point where the jurors just don't feel comfortable convicting somebody of murder or any crime. So, but as far as I know, the jury is allowed, or they are allowed to take notes. I'm not sure what the procedures are in Florida since I've never practiced there, but maybe they are allowed to take notes, and they certainly are allowed to, ask to look at the exhibits again when they're back there deliberating. So, what do you predict? Well, I mean, Yeah, I have no idea, but based on the evidence I saw, as well as the terrible, shoddy testimony that Katherine Magbanua tried to give in her own defense, I mean, she just looked really, really dumb and had selective memory loss on the stand, like not even knowing where she had worked back in 2014. Um, I thought some of the more damning evidence out of many things were the charts that the prosecution showed up on the screen in color, where you can see that her cash deposits, the amount of money that she was putting in her bank account, suddenly shot up right after Dan Markell got murdered. And the fact that the Adelson Institute was still cutting checks to her like clockwork every 2 weeks or twice a month. She kept getting these like so-called paychecks, even though there was no evidence that she had actually worked there or done any work for Charlie Adelson. They were still giving her all this money on a regular basis, even during the time in October of 2014 when she had her what do you call it? Well, they call it a boob job, but breast augmentation surgery. So even though she should have been out and unable to work during the time in October when she had her boob job, I mean, she's still getting paid money, all this money coming in, all this cash, tons more than she had ever made, even when she worked as a bottle girl for these clubs. There was also testimony from the owner of one of the clubs that his club was not doing well financially, and a couple of the paychecks that Katie got from the club bounced, but yet she was still claiming that she got all these cash tips because being a bottle girl was just so profitable. So I think just looking at the money evidence and seeing the charts really was damning evidence against her, as well as all the cell phone or the phone recordings of conversations she had with Sigfredo as well as Charlie after the murder, and then after the so-called bump when undercover agent went to go talk with Donna Adelson. Then they were all freaking out and suddenly talking and getting together for that conversation at the restaurant. I mean, it's all very, very suspicious. If she had nothing to do with it, then how do you explain all these like weird, bizarre phone calls where they were all talking in code and talking about money and everything? So, yeah, that's right. I mean, that's why it's not fair because, like, let's say if you or I were on trial for something, or even in a civil trial, you want to have educated, smart people to be on the jury, but those types of people usually get out of jury duty. Yeah, I mean, who's going to want to rush to go to jury duty if all you get paid is, what is it? I don't even know what it is, like $6 a day, or you get your parking paid for and a free lunch. So, I mean, that doesn't make up for the fact that, a lot of people are paid by the hour and they're going to lose out on income. Or if you're self-employed, then you're going to lose out on income because you're stuck there listening to somebody's trial. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's crazy. It's just like so dramatic with all these different people involved and, rich family that thinks they can get away with it. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Blood is thicker than water. Katie wanted her kids to look at. Yeah, and that's why, I mean, I have many questions, but one of them is, first of all, who's taking care of Katie and Sigfredo's two children now? Some people were guessing that it could be Sigfredo's mother, because Katie had mentioned that sometimes she would drop off the kids at Sigfredo's mother's house so the kids could hang out with their cousins. And I guess Sigfredo has a sister also. Katie also has at least one brother that lives around that area who owns a taekwondo studio. So she mentioned at least one of her brothers was married with kids also. So, amongst all these family members, I guess there are people in the family that are probably willing to take care of the children. Yeah. Oh, okay. Who's the DiPolito girl who tried to get a hitman for her? Oh, yeah, I mean, I guess the joke is that all these crazy crimes happen in Florida, right? Yeah, I don't know anything about that case though, but there are just so many cases out there. I mean, just taking part in these chats in the live streams of the trial. I heard about this. Now, what's that lady's name again? I think the last name was MacArthur, the clown killer. So I started looking into that too. So that's another wacky, weird criminal case is it in Florida? I'm not even sure. But anyway, another wacky, weird murder case that I kind of want to look into, the clown killer case, where um, this lady dressed up as a clown and brought balloons and flowers to, what is it, like a romantic rival or something? I can't even remember. But anyway, after killing this lady, after dressing up as a clown and going there with a gun to shoot the lady and kill her, then Ms. MacArthur ended up marrying that victim's husband, and then she moved away to Tennessee and opened up a restaurant or something, and she almost got away with it for the longest time, for more than 20 or so years. And I'm still not really sure how they found out that she was the clown killer. But anyway, the more I read about all these like wacky, weird, sick, twisted criminal law cases, then I find out about more cases that have happened, and then I want to read all about them too. I mean, it is very interesting. Um, let's see. But getting back to this Adelson, Dan Markell murder and Magbanua trial, let's see. Okay, I think they ultimately want Wendy. If they arrest Donna, Charlie might confess. I see no way Charlie confesses. Well, yeah. Yeah, but then on the other hand, I mean, the family seems pretty very close. I mean, to the point where they would kill off somebody to benefit Wendy. So I don't know. I don't really see him confessing after all this. He's too egotistical. Just based on everything that I heard and read, it seems like Charlie was very, very arrogant and always liked to take charge and act like he was all in charge and he could throw his money around and make people do things for him. Very arrogant person. Another gross thing that we found out about Charlie was that during Jeffrey Lacosse's testimony, he was the one who had dated Wendy for a little while before the murder. So Jeffrey Lacoste is a social work professor at Florida State University. So he said there was like a weird event where, after having dinner with Catherine and Charlie, then he ended up going over to Charlie's home with Wendy, and somehow the three of them wound up in a hot tub together. Now that sounds weird. Like, why would he get in a hot tub with Charlie? Gross. But anyway, then Charlie starts bragging about his sexual exploits in other countries with underage girls and sadomasochism or something, and Jeff Lacoste said that made him feel really uneasy, and he thought it was really weird that Charlie was talking about all these sexual things right in front of Wendy, especially since Wendy supposedly, was, being a law professor or had done immigration law on behalf of victims of human trafficking. So anyway, it just shows what a weirdo and a pervert Charlie was, also, in addition to being someone that wanted to murder his former brother-in-law. Yeah. Yeah, the Casey Anthony case was in Florida. Yeah, I feel so sorry, that poor little girl. She was only, 3 years old or something, and she was found buried in a shallow grave with like tape over her mouth. And, what was even stranger was that she had a butterfly sticker like stuck over the tape that was on her mouth. So just a horrible situation, and the mother went free. So what types of trials come with a jury? Well, pretty much every trial can go with a jury. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the state. I mean, in North Carolina, the family law cases do not have jury trials. So, it's not like Kramer versus Kramer, or what you might have seen on TV, where there's like a jury involved with custody cases or something. I mean, we definitely don't do that in North Carolina. But personal injury cases, yes, you can get a jury trial. But workers' comp, at least in North Carolina and most other states, workers' comp is like an administrative type of process that is not in the regular court system. So in workers' comp cases, you don't get a jury. Instead, you get an administrative law judge who decides on whether someone is entitled to benefits, because I used to do workers' comp cases too at my previous law firms. Yeah, so no jury in divorce cases, at least where I practice. So, oh, okay. The judge said that if it reaches 9:30 and no verdict. Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense, because those poor people are probably like totally drained and exhausted. So, um, yeah. So it looks like people are still just like chatting it up on that Tallahassee Democrat live stream. So I guess the jury is still there. Okay, but it makes sense. They're not going to stay there because then the courthouse employees also have to stay there. Like people have to be guarding the courthouse too at like midnight if they did stay till midnight. So that makes sense that they would leave by a certain time. Um, Maybe they gave her money to shut up. How does that make her the trigger person and guilty? Well, I mean, she's not the trigger person because I think the common belief is that Sigfredo Garcia was the actual trigger person, and Luis Rivera was the one that drove along with him and then, was a getaway driver and everything. Yeah. And so, I'm not sure, but maybe the Adelsons have indirectly still been giving money to Sigfredo and Katie's kids or to her family members. I'm not sure. And I'm not sure if the state is able to get that kind of forensic or do that kind of forensic accounting. But the forensic accountant that testified in this case was an excellent witness. I really was fascinated when that lady was testifying about all the bank records, all the bank statements that she had gone through from Katie's bank account, to figure out, what amount of money she had put in cash every month before the murder happened, after the murder happened, a year afterwards, and then a year later, how much cash was there, how much money was there. Um, so, yeah, I mean, she can still be guilty just because she was also involved in this scheme that had as the ultimate goal the murder of Dan Markell. Yeah. If it's older juries, they might know. Oh, you mean might not know? Yeah, I mean, WhatsApp still seems kind of new, but I remember during the cross-examination of Wendy Adelson, the prosecution was hinting that the Adelson family had later switched to using WhatsApp to communicate because that would be a lot harder to trace, or there are no messages saved that can be later collected, I think. I mean, I've never used WhatsApp before, but I guess they caught on after a while that we better not be talking to each other through the cell phone, or we better not be texting each other. So anyway, did seem like they had started communicating using this app to try to evade law enforcement. Yeah. How are the kids in the yeah, where do the kids go? That's Oh, okay. Yeah. So if you're referring to the Markel children, well, the sad thing is that you guys probably heard about this, but Wendy Adelson quickly changed the kid's last name to her own last name. So the kids are no longer Markel, they are now Adelson. And I think she did this within a year after he was murdered. So the kids were probably too small to really remember having their last name changed. Although maybe the older one might have thought like, why is my last name being changed, or why are people now calling me such and such Adelson? But yeah, who knows if they're getting any sort of counseling, because I would guess that Wendy and her parents and the brother probably all just decided to carry on as normal with the kids and just totally act as if Dan Markell never existed. Maybe they just lied to the kids and said their dad died of a heart attack. Like the kids aren't really going to know any better, but I'm sure eventually they would probably start Googling themselves, or maybe other people who go to school with them might mention something. So, yeah, so it's all a mystery to me, but it seems like the poor grandparents on the father's side, the Markell grandparents, they've been wanting to see the children, but Wendy has not allowed them to see their grandchildren anymore. And she did testify on the stand that she claimed that she had recently invited them to one of the son's bar mitzvahs, but I'm not sure if that's true or not. Jeffrey Lacoste, her former boyfriend, did say a few times during his testimony that Wendy lied a lot, and sometimes he couldn't tell if she was really telling the truth or not, and just made her out to be like this like psychopath that is very conniving and can talk a good game and seem very convincing and sweet at first. So yeah, another thing that Wendy said during direct examination, was, oh, she said that she didn't let Dan's parents see the kids after they threatened to put her kids in foster care. Well, from what I've read, the truth really is that the grandparents weren't trying to take the kids away from her and put them in foster care, but rather when the Markells heard about the Adelson family possibly being arrested or being accused of being involved in murdering Dan Markell. They contacted some sort of like Jewish like child placement agency or something and asked, what could be done, like where would the kids go if the family members did get arrested. So they were kind of being proactive and just asking around, but they did not, as Wendy mischaracterized, directly try to like take the kids away from her to throw them in foster care. So again, that was just like, Wendy conveniently twisting the facts to suit her needs and make herself look good. Yeah, but that's my opinion, right? Hi, Sincerely Hong. Great questions from everyone. Okay, thanks for tuning in. Yeah. Yeah, well, obviously, yeah, I mean, it seems like Charlie would do would was trying to do favors for Wendy to the point of, trying to kill off her ex-husband. Yeah, how can doctors or de Yeah, you would think so, but I guess in any profession, like, some of these people, they're so rich that they have that arrogance about them, which is what Charlie Adelson seemed to exemplify, rich guy that thinks he can control everybody. And I think maybe that's why he liked to date these like poorer women because he felt he could control them and be like their savior and, throw his cash around and everything. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, although, as part of picking a jury, usually the attorneys and the judge try to weed out people by asking them what their prejudices are or how they feel about certain issues, just to get a feel on them to see if this person is already very biased and probably not going to be able to look at all the facts objectively, or if the person already has some negative view towards your client, So, yeah, but it definitely you just can't tell how people are going to interpret things. Yeah. How often a jurors bribes? I have no idea. I don't know. I've never done any sort of study on that, but that's definitely against the law. Yeah. Um, do you think Donna will for sure go down? That's what I'm not really sure because I don't see Charlie or definitely not Wendy. Why would they turn against their own mother? So I'm not sure. And Katie has already gone down that path where she's not going to say anything and just keeps denying and denying and acting like, I didn't have anything to do with it. It was just Sigfredo and Charlie. They cooked up something themselves, never mind the fact that they weren't friends. They didn't know each other before until Katie started dating Charlie. So, and also Charlie or Sigfredo was actually mad at Charlie for a while. Sigfredo came out and started yelling at them because he saw that Katie and Charlie were on their way with jet skis to go out and have fun. So he came out in a jealous, angry fit and started yelling and screaming at them in the road. So, it just doesn't make sense for suddenly, Charlie and Sigfredo became buddies and decided to cook up a scheme to get rid of Dan with Katie knowing nothing about it. Yeah. So I think the evidence against Donna, well, number one, it's her signature on all those checks that were written. Many of those checks were actually sequential. So the forensic accountant lady who testified said that a lot of those checks were actually sequential, which goes to show that once again, Katie was not actually an employee at all. She wasn't doing real work for the Adelson Institute or for Charlie. Instead, it's like these checks were just written out to her in one swoop and then handed over to her. Um, so it was Donna's signatures on the checks. Katie tried to explain it by saying that she needed to get insurance or something for her son because her son needed therapy. So that's why Charlie pretended or sort of agreed to let her be an employee of the dental practice. And then there's that incident that they called the bump, which I believe happened back in 2016 when the undercover agent decided to approach Donna Adelson while she was walking around outside and gave her a slip of paper that said $5,000 with a phone number on it and said, hey, we got something to take care of or whatever, somebody needs to be taken care of. Yeah. So I mean, that in my mind made Donna look very guilty because if she really had no idea who this person was and why are they trying to like tell me they want $5,000 and telling me to call somebody, I mean, an innocent person probably would have contacted law enforcement and said, "Hey, there's this like creepy guy that's harassing me on the street and demanding money from me." But instead of contacting law enforcement, Donna instead is having conversations with Charlie, and then Charlie is calling Katie and meeting up with her to have these like weird coded conversations. So, I mean, but I think that's pretty much the only evidence against Donna, though, plus the fact that she had written these scathing messages to her daughter, just totally criticizing Dan Markell and totally hating on Dan. But I think those are the only concrete pieces of evidence that I know of that's out there in the public about Donna. But I'm not sure. I mean, it would be nice to see Donna also, sent away to prison, but I think the evidence is definitely a lot more damning against Charlie. Yeah. Yeah, Charlie dating poor women, Katie was hungry, Garcia was not giving her. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she wasn't really making much money, and in fact, even on the stand, she was acting like she couldn't remember where she was working. Well, um, like she's had how many years of working with her attorneys? You would think that if she had concrete proof that she really was working someplace later in 2014 and 2015 when she got all that money, then you would think she would have proof and know where she had been working and where she had gotten that money from then. Yeah, but one thing I haven't mentioned yet is that actually Katie is a college graduate. So who'd have thought? Like her parents come from the Philippines, and she goes to University of Central Florida. She majored in something like maybe healthcare administration or something to do with healthcare. So she did get a college degree, but it seems like she just had these like sporadic jobs, working at the a dental practice or maybe working for a real estate office. I think I read that somewhere. And then working as the bottle girl, pouring liquor and getting a bunch of cash tips. But even those jobs didn't seem to last more than a few months here and there. Yeah. Oh, yeah, when, her parents fleeing the country, yeah. So it kind of reminded me of that Samuel Scheinbein case. I'm not sure if any of you guys remember that. That was in the late 1990s around the DC, Maryland area, where Samuel Scheinbein and Aaron Needle were these teenagers who had killed another teenager, Alfredo Tello, after torturing him and cutting off his limbs and setting his body on fire or something. I mean, it was just totally awful. But these two boys had gone to a nice private school. They came from so-called, good educated families. In fact, Samuel Scheinbein's father was an attorney. But so Samuel ended up running off to Israel and fleeing there. And from what I read, his parents also moved there and still live in Israel because back then Israel wouldn't extradite criminally accused people back to their countries. So it looks like the law has changed since then. So I don't know where Wendy and her parents could possibly flee to, especially at this point, with all the more travel restrictions now compared to, say, like back in the 1990s when Samuel Scheinbein was able to run off to Israel. Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. I thought about that too. I was like, wow, just like reading about Charlie and hearing about his sexual exploits and stuff, all the different girlfriends he had and the kind of people he hung out with. I mean, he probably has herpes or has had STDs, who knows? Okay. So, just my opinion. So, yeah, it is very weird. So I just again, it makes you wonder like is she indirectly benefiting by continuing to get cash, cash payouts to her kids or to her other family members, whoever's taking care of her children. Yeah. Can they request the checks for evidence? Yeah, it sounds like they already had the checks. because the forensic analyst, or whatever you call her, the forensic accountant, testified very specifically about the checks that were written out to Katie soon after the murder from the Adelson Institute, the ones that were signed by Donna Adelson. So they already have those checks. Yeah. Someone stated it could cost Katie as much as $200,000 for the defense. Why didn't the prosecutor ask Katie who's paying for her attorney's fees? Yeah, I seem to think there might have been a hearing a long time ago about that, and it wasn't allowed. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Yeah, so if anyone knows the answer for that, let me know. Yeah, but I don't think they were allowed to ask her who's paying for the attorney's fees. But, given that she and Sigfredo got so much cash from the Adelsons, I mean, it's probably from their huge stash of cash, or who knows, from Sigfredo's like previous drug activities, or who knows what. Or I also read somewhere that the Filipino community, I don't know if they're still really on Katie's side anymore, but at the beginning, supposedly like people from the Filipino community around Florida really rallied around her and probably raised money and gave her family money too. So not sure about that, but I read about that somewhere online. Yeah. Insurance. Yeah, it doesn't really make sense. Like, why would she need to have more income to get free insurance for her son? I have no idea. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's what everybody was saying in the chat when Katie was testifying. It's like, if somebody suddenly gave me more than $13,000 of cash in cash, I think I would know where I got that money from. Exactly. I mean, just working as a bottle girl here and there sporadically would not account for getting $13,000 plus enough money to buy a used car and to pay for the breast augmentation surgery. Yeah. FBI had Katie under surveillance on Saturday. She never worked. Yeah. Saturday is how the place was closed. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, but I also recall that on direct examination, yeah, Katie really could not remember what she did for Charlie, because at first, like their theory, the defense was saying that, oh, Katie was working as a personal assistant for Charlie. That's why none of the employees at the Adelson Institute ever saw her working there. And then she was saying that she collected rent. Yeah, yeah, I collected rent for him a couple of times, and I scheduled appointments, but then when she was under cross examination, apparently she could only come up with one appointment that she might have scheduled for Charlie. And then I think she gave up on claiming that she had collected rent for him a couple of times. But I mean, who gets paid thousands of dollars just to like make one appointment? I mean, that's ridiculous, much less, oh, I collected rent for somebody once or twice, right? Yeah. Hi, Oliver. Thank you for being here. Yeah. Airport idea long gone. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay. Spending Friday evening eating dinner, listening to the law. Yeah, thank you. And hearing about all these like horrible, horrible stories and terrible people and the crooked things people do. Yeah. Bar owning. Yeah, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I didn't actually listen to it live when he was testifying. I mean, there's so much that I still want to go back to watch again, because I was just watching Luis Rivera's testimony, since I didn't actually watch it when it was like going on the live stream. Yeah, sounds very interesting though, but I think the bar owner did not help her case whatsoever. Yeah. I mean, it was just so silly how she would well, first of all, she said that, "Well, I can't even remember what happened yesterday." I'm like, "What? You're already losing credibility right there by telling the jury, you can't even remember what happened yesterday." I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, if you're part of a murder for hire plot or something, I'm sure you remembered plenty of details. There's another thing that I didn't mention earlier that also makes Katie look very guilty, was that she had, I think, sent a text to Sigfredo or Luis, or maybe both of them, telling them to take down a picture of an owl on Instagram that Luis Rivera had posted on Instagram when he and Sigfredo were up in Tallahassee to commit the murder. Um, so again, that just goes to show that Katie knew where they were. Katie knew that they were up going to Tallahassee to murder Dan Markell. That's why she freaked out when she saw that Luis had posted a picture of an owl that he had taken out, maybe outside the hotel or something. Yeah, I mean, why do people do such stupid things when they're going to commit a crime? It's like you still have to have such a big ego that you need to post on your Instagram. It's ridiculous. So the Fed should have put Katie and her kid and went. Yeah, who knows what they offered her, but she didn't want to turn on the Adelson family. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it did seem like, Tara Kawas, one of her defense attorneys, was kind of feeding her a lot of information and leading her along during her direct examination. Yeah. Oh, shot a hole in the car. Oh, okay, yeah, so I vaguely remember that also. Was that Luis that accidentally shot a hole in the car? I can't even remember now, but it does sound like, those guys were all doing drugs, like, they even met up with some other guy and did drugs in a hotel room on one of their trips up going to Tallahassee, so, yeah, I mean, just really a sordid, horrible story, but, oh, I can't believe once again, this has lasted a lot longer than I thought it would. It's been a little over an hour now, so just thought that I'd have some sort of, like, quick little live stream while we're waiting for the verdict in Katherine Magbanua's case. And let's see. So said, "Oh yes, definitely." And I think that was the defense's strategy, is to get the jury riled up and angry at Charlie Adelson and Wendy Adelson. So that's why when Wendy was up on the stand, Christopher Lacoste, one of the defense attorneys, started out by saying, "Aren't we here all because of you? It's all because of you that we are here." Trying to get everybody to be angry at Wendy Adelson instead of being angry and remembering that, wait a second, it's Katie who's on trial for helping to conspire to murder Dan Markell. So even in closing too, Kawas was also just focusing on, look how bad and horrible these people are, bad Charlie Adelson, horrible Wendy Adelson, look over here and get mad at those people because my client, oh yeah, she had nothing to do with it. Like, she's telling you she's innocent. Why else would she be sitting here in prison for the last 6 years? Because she really is innocent. So yeah, but I mean, just looking at the evidence and the testimony and everything, I mean, I just feel like most likely she is guilty. And I mean, I personally hope that she is found guilty, and hopefully Charlie will be next. I mean, that'll be very interesting also to watch the trial, if there is a trial of Charlie Adelson. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the information. Yeah. Who knows? It's just really hard to tell with a jury. They could just reconvene on Tuesday, and then we'll still be sitting around waiting and waiting to hear the news on that. Yeah. Why hasn't anyone ever mentioned, if Katherine wasn't a part of the murder plot, then how did Charlie ever meet the killers to hire them to start with? Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not like, yeah, I mean, Katie was already supposedly broken up with Sigfredo, or, maybe she was still, just being wishy-washy with Sigfredo or whatever, but I'm sure it wasn't just that Charlie decided to call up Sigfredo on his own accord and cook up the whole scheme without her knowledge. Yeah. Yeah, I believe she's involved. Yeah. So, I would like to just close this, since, again, in this whole trial of Katherine Magbanua, let's all remember that it has to do with someone, an innocent person who was a loving father and a son and brother, who was much loved by his colleagues, who was, just gunned down in his garage as he drove up into his garage after going to the gym one morning after dropping off his two sons. So, I just want to at least flash up this Wikipedia about Dan Markell. Says he was a Canadian-born attorney and law professor who wrote important works on retribution and criminal law and sentencing, with a focus on the role of punishment in the criminal justice system. A native of Toronto, he earned a JD degree from Harvard in 2001, and after working briefly as a law clerk and junior associate at a law firm, he joined the faculty of Florida State University in 2005. So I did notice the camera started panning around the courtroom after the case was over today, and so we could see his sister and his parents were in the second row. They had been there the whole time watching. So hopefully there will be some justice for Dan Markell. And I thank you guys all for being part of this. And, I'm sure we'll definitely have another live stream in the future about this case. And I will definitely ask Steve Epstein to come on the show again later on, because he's been there in person to watch the trial and is still working on his book about the case. Yeah. So I hope you guys have a good Memorial Day weekend then. And let's keep our fingers crossed for justice for Dan Markell. Thanks for being here.